On Thursday, September 21st, Scarlet Violet 151 will release on Pokemon TCG Live, adding 160-ish new cards to the game. To answer your first question, no, there will not be a new Battle Pass for 151. The current Battle Pass for Obsidian Flames will end with the release of Paradox Rift on November 2nd, meaning that you'll have to craft the cards from 151 with credits, or spend your crystals on in-game packs or redeem codes from IRL packs to expand your collection. In this video, I'll be walking you through all of the cards from 151 that you want to own in PTCGL. We'll kick things off with Special Energy. Well, just like Obsidian Flames, there isn't any. So we'll actually kick things off with the trainers. Since this set is focused around the original 151 Pokemon, there aren't a ton of new trainers, but some of them will be useful. And keep in mind that all of the trainers should be 100 credits each to craft, unless there's a random holo trainer I missed, which would be 400 credits. Looking at the tool cards, Rigid Band is the one I'm most excited about. It's a simple effect. The Stage 1 Pokemon this card is attached to takes 30 less damage from attacks. It's basically just Rock Chestplate for Stage 1 Pokemon. Now that we're in the EX era, multi-prize Pokemon can be Stage 1, so Rigid Band helps cards like Revavroom, Wigglytuff, Copperajah, and basically every other Stage 1 EX. Unless you're planning on playing a Revavroom EX deck, you only need 3 Rigid Band in your collection. I'm not sure what that thing attached to Big Balloon is, but you'll want to craft 2 of them. It removes the retreat cost of a Stage 2 Pokemon, which means it can be useful as a 1-of in a Charizard EX deck, since Pidgeot EX can just go and get it whenever you want it. Or something like Venusaur EX goes from having a 4 retreat cost to having a 0 retreat cost, meaning you can easily use 2 Venusaur EX abilities per turn. There's 2 other tool cards in 151, but you don't really need either. For Safety Goggles, I can't see much use for it at the moment, as there aren't a lot of basic Pokemon who would benefit from eliminating their weakness as opposed to playing Bravery Charm instead. Then there's Leftovers, which heals 20 damage at the end of your turn. While there's a road deck you can build with Snorlax and Electrode, these are some leftovers I won't be reheating in the Heat Rotom. Still, you can always craft 1 of each and mess around with them since they're only 100 credits. Now let's switch to Supporters. I'm going to be a little controversial here and say you don't really need to worry about crafting any of the supporters in 151. I know, tell me how wrong I am in the comments. Looking at Bill's transfer, that can get all Pokemon out of the top 8 cards in your deck. Sure, it could be useful in a Zoroark deck, but if you've ever whiffed on a Great Ball, you'll want to stay far away from Bill. And Daisy isn't as helpful as you want her to be. Daisy's help draws you 2 cards, then you can look at your prize cards. The main benefit is that you can determine which prize cards are the best to take first, since you don't have to shuffle them after looking. But Daisy is your supporter for turn, meaning you can't use something like Iono or Boss's Orders. Then we come to the situational supporters. Erica's Invitation could be super powerful, but it requires your opponent to have a basic Pokemon in their hand. Essentially a combination of Captivating Pokepuff and Boss's Orders, Erica takes a basic Pokemon from your opponent's hand, slaps it onto their bench, and forces it into the active. But odds are you'll be hitting a 1-prizer in their hand instead of a multi-prizer, leaving their real threats in the game. As for Giovanni's Charisma, it requires your opponent's active Pokemon to have an energy attached to it to even work properly. If they do, you put that energy into your opponent's hand, and you can attach any energy card from your hand to your active Pokemon. It can accelerate special energy, but I see Giovanni and Erica in stall or control decks rather than attacking decks. Looking at the items, you'll want 4 copies of Energy Seal. I know it's basically Turbo Patch 2.0, but it can accelerate a basic energy to any benched Pokemon, not just basics. If you don't mind flipping a coin, Energy Seal could help a lot of decks get off to even faster starts. The other item card in 151 worth mentioning is Snatch Arm. Unless you're planning to build a stall or control deck, you can skip it. By comboing Snatch Arm with Judge and Path to the Peak, you can make your opponent cry. It also has the added benefit of just seeing your opponent's hand, so it could guide your Judge or Iono plays. But again, it's not a must-have by any means. Since 151 has fossil Pokemon, you know what that means: new fossil basics! Instead of a universal fossil card for Aerodactyl, Omanyte, and Kabuto to evolve from, they all have their specific ones. Old Helix Fossil is interesting since it stops your opponent from playing Stadiums when it's in the active, creating potential Alakazam EX shenanigans. But what it comes down to is the evolutions. Amistar stops your opponent from retreating. We already have Snorlax for that, so it's kind of useless. Kabutops takes weakness from 2 times to 4 times, which could be exploited in some scenarios with Kecleon, but overall it won't see a ton of play. And Aerodactyl devolves your opponent's active and does 80 damage with a double turbo attached. However, it's probably best suited for a Zoroark deck, which means you don't need the fossil, so I say skip all of them. Last and somewhat least, our only new stadium is Cycling Road. The developers looked at cards like Heat Factory and Scorched Earth, said they were too powerful, and decided to give us Cycling Road. By discarding a basic energy from your hand, you can draw a card. Gardevoir wants energy in the discard pile, so it's a potential inclusion there. In a broader sense, though, I'm just not sure if it's better than Artisan, Path to the Peak, Beach Court, or Collapse Stadium for the decks that would have a use for Cycling Road. To quickly recap the trainer section, just worry about Big Balloon, Energy Seal, and Rigid Band for now, but keep the others in mind as you're building new decks. Moving to the support Pokemon in 151, so you know how we have Kirlia and B-Barrel as single prize draw Pokemon? Well, what if we had a single prize draw Pokemon that could also attack? That's what Dodrio gives us. Obviously, the best partners for Dodrio are Tyranitar EX and Zoroark V-Star, but the potential attacking power can't be overlooked. Zooming Draw puts 1 damage counter on Dodrio and draws you 1 card. I did math, and we all know how that can go, but using cards like Gapejaw Bog or Old Cemetery in tandem with the ability and damage pump means Dodrio can do up to 280 damage for a single energy. Just, be careful against Sableye. A card that can go into pretty much any deck is the new Ditto. The ability is really good, essentially giving you a 5th copy of any basic. If Ditto is in your active spot on turn 1, you can discard it and put any basic Pokemon from your deck in its place. Lost Box decks will love it, and so will any other deck that has a certain basic they want to start every single game. Unless you're a crazy person, you only need to own 1 copy, presumably at 400 credits. Do I think every deck will start playing Sandshrew? Not at all. Do I think it's worth spending 40 credits to have it in your collection? Absolutely. Something that totally won't break PTCGL, Sandshrews' Sandscreen ability prevents your opponent from putting trainer cards back into their deck with the effects of items or supporters. The main card you're stopping here is Palpad, but it also weakens the potential of Silene and Roseanne's backup. Again, not a highly playable card, but as the meta evolves, it could end up being useful. Sticking with commons, the new Charmander and Pidgey are 2 cards you definitely want to craft at 40 credits each. 151 Charmander has 10 extra hit points and can discard something like a Path to the Peak that would otherwise cause problems for Charizard. 151 Pidgey, meanwhile, has 10 less hit points, but the Call for Family attack means you can start it alongside a dead hand and not just outright lose the game. Craft 4 Charmander and 2 Pidgey. And then there's Mew EX. While it is 600 credits, you only need 1 copy. The ability is the exact same as a Rangaroos from Sun and Moon base set. Once during your turn, you can draw until you have 3 cards in your hand. So why is this good when nobody plays Cricketune V? Well, the free retreat doesn't hurt, but the attack makes it extremely versatile. For 3 colorless energy, you can use any attack on your opponent's active Pokemon. So let's say they're playing Radiant Greninja and no Manaphy. You can boss up the Greninja, then use Genome Hacking to snipe 90 damage to 2 Pokemon. As for where Mew EX fits, it can slot into Gardevoir EX, Flaffy, Lugia, Lost Box, and really any deck that plays Double Turbo Energy and Raihan. It's not the most powerful card in Standard, but the versatility cannot be ignored. I couldn't end this section without mentioning Chansey. If you remember Jirachi Prism Star, this is a coin flip version of that. Using cards like Peonia, Arsephone, and Switching Cups, you can potentially get 4 Chansey into the prizes. Then, simply take a knockout of a 2-prizer and you might end up winning the game right there. Obviously, that is a 1 in 1 million chance of happening, and Chansey requires a free bench space, and a coin flip makes it a lot of trouble, but think of how dumbfounded your opponent will be if you pull it off. So to recap, definitely get 4 Charmander, 2 Pidgey, 1 Ditto, and 1 Mew EX. I do recommend also getting 4 Doduo and 4 Dodrio, 1 Sandshrew, and if you're cool, at least 1 copy of Chansey. And now the moment you've all been waiting for. No, it's not a foot reveal. It's the attacking Pokemon in 151. Since 151 goes in Pokédex order, I'll be doing the same, kicking things off with Charizard EX because Venusaur EX is kind of disappointing. Because it's not going to be its own deck, you only need to craft 1 copy of the new Charizard EX at 600 credits. Sure, you could use Magma Basin and Armor Rouge and Chi-Yu or Victini or something to make it work, but just chuck one copy into your existing Charizard EX deck and laugh at all the people who think playing a grass deck is a good idea. Also, 330 damage for 4 energy doesn't suck either. Taking inspiration from your mother for its attack name, Blastoise EX does 280 damage for 2 energy. Yes, it's a stage 2, but it has 330 hit points and takes 30 less damage from attacks, so unless you're facing a lightning deck or Chen Pao, odds are it's going to survive a hit. You can get Blastoise powered up with Palkia V-Star's ability instead of using Baxcalibur, and re-discarding energy is as simple as playing Superior Energy Retrieval. Looking at Squirtle options, you have the 70 hit point one from Go, and the new 60 hit point one that might protect itself. There isn't really an optimal one since you're just playing a 2-2 Blastoise line in most builds, so go with whichever you think is best. Did you know that Arbok is number 24 in the Kanto Pokédex? I always thought it was much later and paired with Weezing. I blame the anime for this mistruth. Anyways, if you've been watching me on stream lately, you know I'm trying to spread the good word about Arbok EX. Everyone else seems to be discounting it, which is perfect for the backwards Cobra. For 3 Darkness Energy, you can power it up with Dark Patch, you deal 150 damage and your opponent discards 2 cards from their hand. Using Path to the Peak in tandem with Judge or Roxanne or Iono, you can do a really good job handlocking your opponent. Other fun inclusions are Spirit Mass to force them to discard a card whenever Arbok is hit, and Rigid Band, which might help keep Arbok alive for an extra turn. If you're planning on playing this deck, craft 3 copies of the EX and 3 copies of Ekans. Remember when Oinkologne EX was a thing for a week? Wigglytuff EX will be a thing for at least 2 weeks. By attaching a special energy to Wigglytuff, like say V-Guard Energy or Therapeutic Energy, it gets an extra 100 hit points, bringing it to 350. Attach a Rigid Band and now it has 350 hit points and takes 30 less damage from attacks. Wigglytuff's attack kinda sucks, but so long as you can loop supporters every turn, you should be dealing at least 160 damage. Just like Arbok, craft 3 of each if you want to play this archetype. There isn't an optimal Jigglypuff unless your deck plays Fog Crystal, so just go with whatever you think is best. Another card that definitely won't break PTCGL, Alakazam EX can attack from the bench. This means you can put a Klefki or Mimikyu or Palkia or Snorlax in the active and deal a somewhat disappointing 120 damage. But if you want to jack someone's mind, I've got some good news. The first Ndari attack is pretty darn good. If they have a full bench, it deals 240 damage for 2 energy. To be on the safe side, you probably want to craft 3 Abra, 1 Kadabra, and 3 Alakazam. And yes, this is the first time in a very long time that we're getting all 3 of these Pokemon together in a set. Skipping past the Magneton so control players don't get any ideas, do you know what's better than coin flip cards? Coin flip cards that can deal more damage than you can possibly imagine but never actually will. That's where Kangaskhan EX comes in. For 3 colorless energy, you flip 4 coins. For each heads, you deal 100 damage. Slap a Bravery Charm on Kangaskhan and it has 280 hit points. Play Dunsparce and it has no weakness. Get 3 copies and prepare to have your greatest victories ever and also your most heartbreaking defeats. I tried to keep this video as tight as possible, which meant I left out a fair amount of cards with potential. And I gotta say, after the disappointment of OF, I'm super excited to try out a lot of these decks. I just don't see them impacting the meta all that much. Still, I'd like to highlight them rapid fire style right now. I believe in Beedrill. If you have no cards in hand, you deal 130 damage with a double turbo energy, all while paralyzing and poisoning. Modify the Hisui and Arcanine list and have fun annoying your opponent. Raticate definitely deserves some attention. For each damage counter on your opponent's active Pokemon, it does 30 plus 30 more. Basically, if they have 8 damage counters, you're knocking out nearly everything in Standard. Pair it with Vengeful Punch for extra shenanigans. Machamp is just fun. Borrowing Harry Mama's ability, it might never get knocked out. Then you can either win by taking prizes or by milling 2 cards every single turn. Hitmonlee could be useful as a one-of in Ting-Lu. Spend 100 credits, get a card that makes the ability blocker even better. You spread 10 damage to all of your opponent's Pokemon, then switch Hitmonlee to the bench. It's useless in pretty much every other deck, but Ting-Lu could use it for shenanigans. Jinx and Hypno is a fun deck idea that will be completely obsolete when Roaring Moon EX comes out in November. Put your opponent's active to sleep with Hypno, then use Jinx to one-shot them. But Roaring Moon takes a one-shot without the need for Hypno, and it can use Dark Patch to power itself up. Electrode is a rogue deck you can pair with Snorlax. By recycling your 4 leftovers every turn, you can deal 180 damage every turn for a single energy. And obviously bump that damage up with other tool cards. Wheezing is Galarian Cursula with a passable attack. 50 damage and 10 spread at least puts some pressure on your opponent, but we all know you just want to flip heads and take free prizes. Seeking is Swim Freely Dewgong, but it can use Reversal and Superior Energy Retrieval instead of hoping to B-barrel the energy back into your hand. It's arguably better than Dewgong, but that's like saying Yungoos is better than Patrat. I was originally going to suggest crafting Vaporeon, Jolteon, and Flareon for your Zoroark deck, but then I realized Raichu from 151 is a better Jolteon, and Satitan is a better Vaporeon. Flareon seems to be a good choice for a fire type though. And there you have it. While I think 151 is a better set than Obsidian Flames, if you're disappointed with it, you only have to wait like 5 weeks until Paradox Rift comes out. In the meantime, these are the cards you want to plan on crafting in 151, coming in at a total of about 11,000 credits. I included the pre-evolutions in the attacking section, so that's why some of the numbers are different. If you think there are some cards people should be crafting in 151, or if you think I'm an idiot with nice feet, let everyone know in the comments.